Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about the Total War Saga Troy and about the most recommended campaigns for anyone that's eager to jump into this game and try it out before Pharaoh comes out, Pharaoh being effectively a sequel of this particular title. There are a bunch of campaigns and there's 3 different modes: Historical, Truth Behind the Myth, which is the base line mode of the game, and Mythological. Mythological requires mythos. Now, what's nice, by the way, is that the tutorial campaign is for Agamemnon, but it's very hand-holdy type of tutorial. And I guess Agamemnon is supposed to be the starter character, but it really doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work out quite effective. Don't play Agamemnon. Actually, don't play any of the Dana except one. Don't play any of the Chians except for one particular character, because these campaigns can be brutal or they have their own issues. I mean, Odysseus can be pretty decent, for instance, but he will have limitations because he can only really establish coastal settlements, not proper inland settlements, and there's a lot of territory inland. So, and playing a naval campaign in a game without naval battles and the distances that have to be covered via the sea can be something of an issue. At number 3, we have Menelaus of Sparta. Now, looking at Menelaus, he isn't necessarily the best fighter that does exist in the world, but he does get adventure, so he gets campaign movement range plus 5%, and he gets lineage, which gives him motivation for new hero recruits and plus influence in his own province, which can actually be pretty solid enough. And then he has a colonization benefit. So when you colonize a ruined settlement, usually you lose half the troops in an army. But Menelaus has 2 benefits with colonization. 1, he doesn't lose troops if he just walks up to a particular settlement. And 2, he can just colonize it from a distance. Now keep in mind, this is going to cost you resources and it's going to be an issue to do so, and his campaign start isn't necessarily the best. That's why he's bottom of the list, but the colonization benefit can be great to capture distant territories, especially via the sea. You are kind of playing a naval campaign, and I say kind of because really what you're playing is a Crete campaign. What you're going to want to do is go over here in Crete and capture it, because there's one gold mine, there's various resources, and the factions over here aren't necessarily too big of an issue. And then jump on over to Crete, into Rhodes, and then just pay a visit to Sarpedon. That is your campaign plan. Or you can wipe out the Arcadians and capture the gold mine over here in Elis, capture Elis, and then move over here for the second gold mine. Though keep in mind the Cretan factions are likely to declare war on you. Now, here's a major benefit that Menelaus has in his campaign. Let's say I get a military alliance, if I could get a military alliance against with someone. Let's go, okay, let's go with Nestor as an example. Now, Menelaus has global recruitment, but he doesn't just have regular global recruitment, he has a legion system. Basically, this is the prototype of the legion system that we have in Warhammer 3. So what you can do is use Call to Arms. Now, Call to Arms works as global recruitment does in Warhammer Warhammer 3. So the cost is higher, but the thing is, he can globally recruit from every ally he has. So, for instance, since I start off allied with Agamemnon, defensive alliance, you don't need a military alliance, you just need a defensive alliance. I can recruit skirmishers, which I don't have the ability to recruit by default. The reason this is so significant is it allows you to have a very diverse army, which is pretty powerful because different kinds of units may be worth it, especially when we're thinking about cost. Like, let's say you may not have the best food production, but you may have bronze. Some units may require bronze. Well, Agamemnon has actually a bunch of bronze units, units that require bronze. So you can make a very diverse army and a pretty powerful army, which is a significant advantage because the army roster varies from faction to faction. Usually a lot of factions, if not the vast majority of factions over here in the game, can have a pretty crap unit roster. Menelaus doesn't have that problem because he can make all these juicy alliances. So I can go ally Odysseus over here, for instance, by declaring war on his initial faction. Let's say I give him a bunch of resources, or I wait the turn and then ally him. Then I can recruit his sword skirmisher units. So I have a flexible roster, I have a great deal of power, and I can recruit these units in every army. Now, it does take 2 turns to globally recruit, but there's ways around that. So if we're looking at the building browser, we have 2 different buildings. They cancel each other out. But you have a building that lowers the recruitment cost to minus 20% for foreign units, so from units from other factions, and gives you an increase in local recruitment capacity, and also recruitment rank. And you also have a building that's exclusive with the other one that reduces the global recruitment duration for all units in the particular province. So what this means is you don't just have your basic unit roster over here as Menelaus, you have the unit roster of everyone else. You can get the unit roster of Argos, you can get the unit roster of Ajax, you can get the unit roster of Achilles. You can make some pretty powerful armies. His campaign can be a bit of a pain because you might declare war on, say, the faction that Odysseus starts a war with, or you end up in a war with Hellas and they come from the north, and then you have the Cretans from south. But the power in the end game is there, and you're not going to encounter a situation where you just don't have the end game roster to go up toe-to-toe against Troy, which can be a significant issue. And number 2, we have Hippolyta of the Amazons. Now, for the Amazons DLC, you get 2 legendary lords. People complaining about the Chaos Dwarfs. You look back at some of the other games that Creative Assembly has made. But you get 2 lords, 2 epic heroes. One's a horde army, and there are severe limitations on that on reinforcement. Like with horde armies, you can only fight a battle with one particular army at a time. That's why she's not included. That's why Memnon is not included on this list, or Rhesus. Well, Rhesus does have regular territory, but he can also spawn like disposable horde armies, if you'll. Not really horde armies, but they kind of work in the same way for the purposes of battle. So you can't reinforce them in a battle. They can't reinforce you. Either way, with the Amazons, Hippolyta has territory, and she's going to occupy it, and she is actually quite ridiculously strong when we're looking at her faction effects. But first off, let's take a look at the territory she starts with. She starts at war with a minor faction. She's going to sweep them aside very, very easily, because this capital doesn't really have any army, any proper garrison, and you're going to be able to recruit a whole bunch of different units as the Amazons very quickly to sweep them aside. On top of that, you have gold very close to you. Yes. So you have a whole bunch of resources: bronze, gold, not necessarily so much stone. Stone can be a bit of an issue, but there are a ton of different resources that you can use. Like capture this gold mine, get this wood location, capture more and more territory until you're really steamrolling on a campaign. Having access to a lot of resources early on is important. It would be great if you did have access to some early stone. You don't, unfortunately. But having access to a gold mine so quickly, so close to you, will give you a significant early game advantage. And you can always trade for stone with other factions. Like you can always encounter Lycia and trade with them for that stone. Okay, so starting position is pretty good. You do have a tier 3 settlement. It doesn't have any kind of like barracks in it, but you can make do without that for the moment. But it does start at tier 3 and does have a tier 3 farmland, which means it's going to generate a good amount of food. And you can reach a pretty damn ridiculous level over here with that. Having a tier 3 starting settlement, even if it's a minor one, is a fairly substantial advantage. Now, with the way the Amazons work is that they don't recruit high tier units normally. They have a bunch of lower tier units like the swordsmen, swordswomen, the chargers, the initiates, the stone slingers, and the archers. They have the precursor to the Warriors of Chaos Warband upgrade system. For them, the way it works with regards to their unit, they need to get a unit to a certain rank. We can actually see we can actually see the initiation rights, like how the units work. But you need to get the structures in order to unlock these various units. So if I want a tier 3 basically infantry unit, I need to get a unit of swordswomen to rank 4, and I also need to get a barracks to tier 3. So I need to get one of these barracks buildings. You also have cavalry, not just chariots, so you have chariots as well. So you need to basically get these buildings. You only need one of each in your entire empire, and you can always upgrade these units. That is incredibly powerful because it means you're not just running around with a bunch of low tier units. You start running around with a bunch of low tier units, then you get a bunch of high tier units very, very quickly in your campaign. What makes Hippolyta really powerful from this perspective, she does get influence, no, she gets lineage, she gets favor of Ares, and she gets the epic hero effect. She also gets a diplomatic relations benefit with Troy. But what's really important, she has the Amazon Kingdom system. So the way the Amazon Kingdom works is you unlock various milestones. You do need a certain amount of Amazon treasures, which are a special campaign resource that can be acquired from certain settlements passively, like sacred sites. Right, so there is one over here in the initial settlement that you should be claiming on turn 1, another one over here, various sacred sites around the world you can claim. I believe there's some in Athens as well. And you do start a war with Athens. Your ultimate goal is to actually wipe out Athens. But the benefit over here with regards to the Amazon Kingdom is we look at this situation. What do you get? Well, you start unlocking your heritage. The first milestone, which just requires 10 treasures, will allow you to use these treasures to then boost the experience ranks of your units, which means you can get the veteran army pretty quickly in this campaign. And once you get a good amount of these treasures, you will get highly experienced armies. The upgrade is kind of finicky. It's annoying. You can't upgrade units en masse, unfortunately. So you'll have to do it, but this will increase per rank. The cost of treasure is dependent on the current experience of a unit has. So for instance, if I want to take a unit of let's say initiates and then upgrade them, then I will need rank 4 in order to upgrade them. And I can get rank 4 for the Amazon Kingdom. That's just the lowest level milestone. At tier 2, we get the ability to increase hero rank, so Lord rank. That is pretty ridiculous when you consider it. We can instantly complete research. We get the ability of improving our diplomatic effect. Diomedes for the Achaeans has a similar effect through dominance, but dominance can be difficult to get. I'm sure you are obviously going to be limited in how much of this you're going to use, but the thing about this system is that from very early on it gives you a lot of power, and as you get more and more of these sacred sites, as you get more and more of these treasures, and there's a lot to be unlocked, like there's like 4 different settlements that you can see close enough to me, like 3 to the north, 1 to the south. As you unlock a lot of these Amazon treasures, you'll just start steamrolling completely out of control, and you'll recruit units that are high rank, you'll turn those into veteran units, and you'll just annihilate your enemy. The Amazons don't necessarily have the best army, but the sheer ability of steamrolling the campaign map is absolutely there. And finally, at number 1, we have Sarpedon of Lycia. What makes Sarpedon so powerful? Well, first off, he starts with a tier 3 capital and a tier 2 minor settlement. Hippolyta is on this list because she just starts with a tier 3 minor settlement. This guy starts with a tier 3 major settlement. That means from turn 1 you can start upgrading your barracks to get to the tier 3 barracks to unlock tier 3 units, which are going to be much better than anything any of your enemies can throw against you. And that's just your start situation. You also start in this corner over here where your only opponent really is Rhodes. Well, it used to be Rhodes, but now Memnon starts over there and he's gonna burn it to the ground, so you don't even have to worry about them. The only factions to these, there's 2 minor factions over here, and you can kind of just wipe both of them out or decide to help one of them out versus another. That is your decision, what you decide to do over here. You also start with a gold mine pretty close to you over here in your territory. Though be aware that picking a fight with these guys means also picking a fight potentially with others as well. Just be aware of what you're getting yourself involved in by declaring war on them. But they do have a gold mine and a pretty good province with 3 different settlements. It is annoying that you start with a ruined settlement over here, but that's not really too much of an issue, too much of a hassle to resolve. Now, beyond the fact that you start with your 3 settlements, so this will allow you to get some really good units. Now, these units have a decent level of armor, especially the heavy axe warrior. So you're looking at a good amount of armor piercing damage, if I'm not mistaken, over there. They'll do well in out-resolve, they'll do well in a regular battle. You can also get some pretty effective spearmen. You may not start with any kind of ranged unit on foot, but you can get Eastern Slingers if you so decide to build the structure. More insanely than that, you also start with the ability to recruit chariots. Archer chariots, not the best in the world, sure. Lycian winged chariots. They're not the best, but they can certainly run in circles around the enemy. But this is your turn 1 recruitment option. You get axe warriors, which are pretty solid, like the medium infantry. They're not heavy infantry, so they're not the best you could possibly have. But you basically have one of the best... You have the best starting situation of any faction in the entire game. You have a ton of resources around you. You do start with stone. You can get wood and gold and more wood, food. There's also a bunch of ruined settlements over here, which is a bit of a shame, but certainly there's a significant amount of potential that does exist in this campaign. And that's not even counting Sarpedon's other qualities. His lineage gives them battle speed for chariot units and diplomatic evaluation to diplomatic agreements, except barter. So alliances and all that kind of stuff he can make easier. What's even crazier is he has trade missions. Now, if we look at the royal decrees, he starts with gold. So he's going to be able to generate. So he's already generating 20 gold from the very onset. You're probably going to use that gold to get all these precious resources. Because what you can do, you can engage in trade agreements, basically steal barters from one faction. Like you take a look at 2 different AI factions, you look at a barter they have between themselves, and like you go to one of them and say, how about we take that agreement and you trade to me what you're trading to that other faction? And insanely, you are building influence by engaging in any kind of barter agreement with factions. So you're building your faction influence in the territories you're taking over. Crazier, you're getting those precious resources for various things. So you have 3 things you can do with them. With white granite, you can get the construction time reduction for all the main buildings and gain ancillaries, and reduce the stone construction costs. And you start with stone. You can get the significant benefit in battles, and you gain ancillaries for all 3 of these. I think the ancillaries are different. Then you can get favor of the gods from rituals in your own settlement, and a 12 influence faction-wide benefit. This ends up being ridiculous, because influence is effectively going to generate you money in the territories you control. So you have a faction that can dominate via trade, that has a lot of starting resources, that has a really powerful starting situation. Like, you don't need more than a tier 3 settlement for a good amount of your campaign. That isn't a joke, by the way. I mean, you could always use the building slots, to be sure, but you don't need more than this, really, because you'll recruit a bunch of units. Like, yeah, maybe get skirmishers, sure, and, you know, get rid of the centaurs, because you absolutely don't freaking need them, and just get temples and all that over here. Maybe getting it to tier 4 quickly would be ideal to unlock more agents. But regardless, you start with powerful army, powerful unit recruitment, powerful settlements, and a significant economic potential throughout the course of your campaign. And you're kind of screwing everyone else with the influence thing. If you're ever playing against Sarpedon, or if you're ever engaging with Sarpedon in the campaign, never barter with Sarpedon. Ever. Because he's just going to screw you over in terms of the influence he's building. If you're playing as another faction. If you're playing as Sarpedon, enjoy annihilating all of your opponents with ease on the campaign map, because there's literally nothing they can do against your army. Because look at these guys. They start with tier 1 settlement and they have a barracks. What the hell are they going to do? They're going to recruit a bunch of crappy spearmen. Those spearmen are not going to stand up to your chariots and axes. Those are just some of your initial enemies that you get to deal with. It is absurd. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.